Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today we are here to do a chapter review of 254, The Decisive Battle in the Uninhabited Demon-Infested Shinjuku, Part 26! Yeah, that's right, Part 26 of the 26th long chapter fight against Sukuna. Let's go, because we're about to get Kusakabe, Kusagopi himself, versus Sukuna. So without further ado, let's get straight to this chapter review. So the chapter starts out with some narration text, where the narrator then says, an unthinkable matchup, Kusakabe in a one-on-one against the strongest Sukuna. As it's then right after we get Kusakabe activating new Shadow Style Simple Domain, Evening Moon's Sword Drawing, where Sukuna begins to think to himself, because Sukuna is a little bit confused by this. The reason why Sukuna is confused by that is because Simple Domain is an anti-barrier based technique. As he thinks to himself, a sword drawing technique against someone like me who can send slashes flying, as an anti-domain and anti-barrier technique, a simple domain is able to negate the sure hit effect, but it can't neutralize the technique itself. Regardless, no matter how simple domain is a domain. Basically, the reason why this is a confusing thing for Sukuna is because a simple domain should only really cancel out this sure hit property that a domain has. It wouldn't really stop Sukuna from launching out slashes, especially because he doesn't have a domain active, so he doesn't really know what Kusakabe is planning in the current moment. But it's then right after we switch thoughts back to Kusakabe, as Kusakabe thinks to himself, within this domain my curse energy output will get a boost, while the power of Sukuna's abilities will weaken somewhat. But what I'm much happier about. As it's then before we get the end of that thought, Sukuna launches out a slash at Kusakabe. However, Kusakabe seems to either dodge or parry away the slash. I'm not entirely too sure, it's actually not too clear in my eyes. I want to see what you guys think in the comment section down below, so maybe you guys can help clarify for me on that one. But either way, Kusakabe in some way, shape, or form does avoid getting hit by the slashes. As Kusakabe then thinks to himself, I can incorporate my own original programming to my simple domain, allowing me to intercept anything that invades my domain completely automatically. Good reaction time, Sukuna thinks to himself. I can more or less read Sukuna's slashes by focusing on his movements, or his curse energy sparks that should improve things by a bit, which is what Kusakabe thinks to himself. Now, to basically explain what Kusakabe is doing through new Shadow Style, he's effectively making it so instead of him himself having to predict the movements, he's using new Shadow Style in order to assist his prediction of the movements when the new Shadow Style immediately detects any attack within the domain. Basically taking advantage of the fact that the new Shadow Style is effectively a sure hit for himself but without a curse technique, so he's using his blade instead, which allows him to basically read any attack and near automatically react to it without needing to actually be at that level of reaction speed. As then right after, Kusakabe just shows how effective this tactic actually is by deflecting a slash upwards into the sky away from himself. But the slash got really close to hitting Kusakabe, as Kusakabe said that scared the crap out of him. But he also begins to think about something else, the fact that Sukuna was able to activate his technique without moving a muscle. As Kusakabe, by reading the sparks of Sukuna's energy, was able to tell that Sukuna was likely about to use the World Slash. Now, before I do continue on with the chapter, I am going to talk a little bit about this entire quote-unquote new revelation that Sukuna can use slashes without moving his body. This isn't really a new revelation in either the anime or the manga, especially not the anime, where if you watch the entire Sukuna vs. Jogo battle, you were able to see that when he was engulfed by a pool of lava, he was literally able to use the slashes to just make the lava go away from him. But that's not the only time we've seen it either, because we've actually seen him do it a couple times in the manga. The two times we've seen him do it in the manga is both against Naniko and Mimiko when he fought against them after Naniko and Mimiko tried to manipulate him back in Shibuya, as well as against Yorozu, which Yorozu was seemingly cut, though for a while a lot of people thought that was Urame. However, we did know Sukuna could do it at least when it came to Naniko and Mimiko, because he never made a single movement before, well, what happened to Naniko happened to Naniko. As it's then right after, we get a little bit of a flashback once again, in a similar manner to how the entire interview went down when Yuji had landed a black flash for Nanami, as well as when they were talking about Gojo and why Gojo was the strongest back in Shibuya, as we get Meimei and Ui on a trip, with Meimei saying, in terms of raw strength, I put myself or Nanami-kun above him, to be frank. I wouldn't say I can visualize Kusakabe-san winning fights, more so that I find it hard to imagine him losing. Which is the line that Nanami says right after. Not only has he mastered the sword, but he has an abundance of technique variations and is capable of utilizing barrier techniques. All abundance of Jujutsu knowledge serves as a foundation for his greatest strength, his analytical ability and power of reasoning, which it then swaps back over to Meimei, as Meimei says, he's a veritable Swiss Army knife, the type of sorcerer you would wish to accompany you on a deserted island. And then we finally get back to Gojo, who's ordering ice cream, kind of just enjoying life. As Gojo then says, he has that simple domain, right? That's an ace in the hole in its own way. Beginners usually gotta make some binding vow or another just to use that. As then we get a little bit of a Miwa comment, which Miwa somehow manages to get even more nerfed even though Miwa's not even fighting, because Miwa was revealed to have a binding vow of keeping both of their legs firmly planted in order for them to activate the technique. Somehow Miwa's catching strays even though Miwa can't even fight anymore. Poor Miwa. As Gojo says with a popsicle in hand, yet Kusakabe-san is able to use it freely, plus the range on that thing is wild. As we then return back to Kusakabe fighting against Sukuna, and Kusakabe massively expanding the range of the new Shadow Style Simple Domain, with the only other person we have seen having that range before is Gojo himself, which is absolutely insane and shows the level of mastery that Kusakabe actually is at. As Sukuna is looking down and a thought has entered into his head, while he's thinking, he increased the range of his simple domain to stop me from charging up curse energy to expand my technique's target. Where Mei starts to say, the new Shadow Style sword draw fundamentally is a counter technique used to draw in your opponent. Kusakabe, on the other hand, is capable of bringing his opponent to him by expanding the range of his simple domain, coupled with the fact that he can intercept anyone who invades his simple domain completely automatically. An individual capable of achieving grade 1 sorcery with no curse technique attacks, not with their braid, but with their spine. They are not to be taken lightly. That took me many more takes than I am proud of saying to record that, because of why did that take me so long? I have no idea. As is then, Kusakabe, in a moment of speed, does several slashes to Sukuna at once, where Sukuna is just staring, looking kind of bored in this current moment, but also kind of impressed. It's this weird look of a mixture of bored and impressed. I don't really know what to describe this as, but that's what it's coming off as to me. As is then right after, Nanami says, I don't know a single person who can evade that, although there is one who wouldn't need to. Obviously speaking about Gojo, because this attack that Kusakabe just performed allows him to slash that many times, which would have been much more useful on some other people, but it is what it is. After all, it's probably just no one could learn this because Kusakabe is the simple domain prodigy. However, unfortunately for Kusakabe, the sword ends up breaking, but Kusakabe decides, we don't need a sword, this is Jujutsu Kaisen, and he legit starts to box with Sukuna for a moment and punching him. Kusakabe is actually kind of going crazy. The man knocked Sukuna back a decent bit and knocked him into a literal street intersection, which is absolutely nuts. Especially considering this is a Sukuna who just got a Black Flash amp. Kusakabe was able to launch Sukuna that far back with a kick. Man is impressive. As Kusakabe then gets a flashback back to Yaga, where to sum up the flashback, Kusakabe feels indebted to Yaga. Even though he knows Yaga is no longer alive, he fears ending up going to the afterlife and seeing Yaga's disappointed face, and he wants to make sure he can make it up for Yaga and try his absolute best rather than just dying and only giving half of his effort. Honestly, some really solid stuff from Kusakabe. As Gojo, Mei, and Nanami all agree on one simple thing about Kusakabe, that he's a very kind person, and he enters into an Honored One-like pose as he's dodging more slashes. As Kusakabe then realizes he needs to snap himself out of his thoughts. After all of the kids had thrown themselves into death, thrown themselves with the massive risk of death up to this point, so Kusakabe, as an adult, has to do the exact same thing as them. He needs to put his own life on the line, charge straight into death, and risk his life. After all, what kind of protector would he be if he didn't? As Kusakabe activates new Shadow Style, Moonlight Veil, effectively using his curse energy in order to replicate the blade itself, creating a blade made out of cursed energy as he attempted to go for a stab on Sukuna's heart, the same stab that Maki had landed beforehand, and with the steps that everyone had set up, from Yuji's attacks to Yuta's attacks to Higuruma to Gojo to Maki themselves, Kusakabe did it. He ended up freeing Megumi and stabbing right through Sukuna, and he had defeated Sukuna. And then everything was going to be okay. Oh wait, no, this is Jujutsu Kaisen. We don't get any happiness. Everyone has to die around here. I'm just joking. This was all a joke. Yeah, Sukuna catches the blade with two of his fingers as Sukuna tells him, aiming for my damaged heart, I see. You couldn't be more transparent. And Kusakabe says, well, damn. Which I gotta say, I feel really bad for Kusakabe, but at the same time, it is what it is. Not a single one of us, and I mean not a single one of us on this planet, expected Kusakabe to actually win. Do some damage? Maybe. That I could see being possible, as some of you guys expected that. I didn't, but none of us had expected at all that Kusakabe was going to live through this and actually survive. So, Sukuna lands a slash on Kusakabe, and he lands on the ground as Ui appears to try and save Kusakabe. But Sukuna appears out of nowhere, having hidden around to make sure Ui wouldn't have detected him, which, I need to say this now, how did Sukuna hide? Where did this 8-foot-tall, 4-armed behemoth hide? Was he just going inside of a little bush, just like waiting, crouched down? It's like, I think the kid who took out Kenjaku took this method beforehand. Bush camping is what it's called, right? Alright, bush camping. Let's wait for him to arrive. The little teleporting brat who has been stopping me from getting my proper kill count. Like, I want to know, how did Sukuna even manage to hide? Where did this man hide? Because we knew he hid away. Or did this man just, like, speed blitz, go to another part of the city, and the second he sensed Ui, he just ran right back, appeared behind him, and is just like, nah, I ain't letting you take him. I've been done with y'all interrupting my kills. However, it's then Ui is saved by the man who went toe-to-toe with Gojo Satoru, a man himself who's not a Japanese sorcerer from another country, a man that Sukuna didn't even recognize and knew existed, Miguel. Now, is this when we're going to get some Miguel gas? Some Miguel gas up in the tank? Are we about to see Miguel 1v1 Sukuna as he's holding Ui between his arms? Find out next week on Jujutsu Kaisen, because there is no break this week. But holy, not a single one of us were actually expecting Miguel to arrive. This absolute Chad of a man. None of us were expecting him to arrive. But this chapter is, like, I don't know what to feel of this chapter. I kind of like this chapter a lot. I love that we got to see what Kusakabe was going to do. It kind of went how we all expected. Like, none of us were really expecting Kusakabe to do anything actually meaningful against Sukuna. Let's be honest with us. Like, the only thing we were expecting Kusakabe to do was potentially stall. But even then, like, it's kind of unfortunate. But it is what it is. Wump wump. So yeah, Sukuna's about to fight against Miguel next. And, this is going to be a either good fight, bad fight. I have no idea. There's not much we can really expect from Miguel. Because, like, a huge issue with Miguel versus Gojo when we saw that fight was we only saw, like, a few minutes of it. Miguel was fighting Gojo for 12 minutes in total. So we have no idea what this man is about to pull out, what this man is going to show. This is a completely new canvas. Especially considering a year and a half has passed. A year and a half where he was training Yuta Akotsu and sparring against Yuta Akotsu more than likely. So Miguel is not a slouch by any means. Alright, we're about to get the most massive fake out of all time where Miguel arrives in order to make sure Ui is okay and he just teleports away. It also should be noted, Miguel did in a way speed blitz Sukuna, or at least somewhat speed blitz. He outsped Sukuna in some way, shape, or form, which is incredibly impressive. However, we're going to have to wait to see what happens at that battle next time on Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm going to see y'all later. Peace out. Have a good day. Bye.